Good morning and welcome back. Now that we talked about this lathe in my previous video, we're going to do something with it. We're going to make a pin, and the pins we're going to make in this video are these very simple, basic slimline pins. And before we get started making these pins, we're going to go over a few of the accessories and items that you need. There's a lot here on the table. Kind of could probably be intimidating to some, but we're going to quickly go over it and really show you it's not that bad once you get the initial items, and you can just continually batch these pins out, or any other type of pin for that matter. But these are just a very simple, basic, good starter item to learn how to turn. So the first thing we need is basic safety equipment. Most importantly, safety glasses. If you're going to be turning a lot of exotic woods, or you have allergies to certain types of dust, highly recommend some sort of dust mask. I like to use a face shield, highly recommended for this. This is the shield that I use. It's just kind of mesh material, because you're going to be facing straight down on top of your work anytime you're turning. Unlike saws where you have to stand off to the side, you're standing right over the top of your workpiece. So potential for pieces to fly off and smack you in the face. So face shield. Obviously, most importantly, for turning wise, you're going to need a lathe. This is the Wen mini-lathe. I reviewed it in my last video. If you'd like to see that, please feel free to go back. And this lathe is great for these smaller projects and definitely beginner projects. You're also going to need some spindle gouges or chisels. I have two different styles here. I have a square tip and a round tip. I reviewed these also. You can just get away with just a round tip. I like to use a square to basically get everything roughed up and then finish off with a round side. And for pins in particular, you're going to need a pin mandrel, and this is a pin, I believe this is from Woodcraft. I'll post all the links for this down below, but you will need a pin mandrel for this and any other type of pins that you're making. Whenever you're making these pins, and they come in various sizes, depends on, these are 7mm pin bushings. You will need these. If you get a kit, I'll show a good kit to get. This is one that I started with, and they come with the necessary bushings that you need. And they'll, any different pins will have different size bushings, so just keep that in mind. And then you'll need a tail center, and that'll be able to lock in and tighten up on your mandrel. You'll need a piece of what called pin blank. You can either buy these or you can make them yourselves. The main thing about a pin blank is they're 3/4 of an inch square and at least 5.5 inches long. So these I made on my own. I have a whole box back here behind me that I keep all mine. That whenever I had a lot of scraps, great little scrap project. If you got just leftover scraps from hardwoods and stuff like that, especially your exotics you don't want to throw away, turn them into pin blanks. Along with this, you will need a 7mm drill bit, and you can either drill your hole either with a Jacob's chuck here, or a drill press behind you, or just a regular hand if you're that great, and a pin reamer. So again, like I said, a lot of things here kind of intimidating, but once you get your lathe, you can turn anything you want. Pin mandrel, you'll need it for any kind of pin turning anyway. 7mm drill bit, you'll have an assortment of drill bits anyway. Your reamers, when you get these sets, I'll again link. You can get all these different reamer sizes, and they're all interchangeable. And then pin blanks are just, like I said, a lot of square laying around. Now, the basic meat and potatoes of the pin will all come in one kit with everything that you see here. So you have your barrels, your turn mechanism, your insert and cartridge, and then your accessories such as your cap, your clip, and your nose piece. So those all come together. And then once you get all that assembled, you'll need to finish it. You can use basic sandpaper. This is starts out, I usually start at 220 grit here. And then I have this small set of reusable high grit sandpaper, everything from 1500 grit up to 12,000 grit I use for any of my turnings. So nice little compact here. And then when you're finished, typically 9 times out of 10, 90% you're going to use, this is just basic thick CA glue. Works great for pens, gives a nice solid hard finish. Pretty simple, pretty easy to apply, just put on with a rag. If you're doing other things, you can. There is especially wood turners finish here. This is for things like I'm doing bowls or stuff like that. So, and then there's some other accessories that aren't necessarily required, but definitely helps in the long run. I have a small bench press vise here that I created. This vise cut with 45s in it, and this holds my pen blank center. So it keeps it usually just sits over here on top of my drill press. And then I recently picked up this pen press, and this helps when you do all of your final assembly on your pens. A lot of these components, especially this turn mechanism, needs to be tightly seated. It's a very tight fit. And you can use other items just like clamps or vices, but this is specifically designed to be able to allow you to press that in there. Just something if you're going to be mass producing or batching these out. So that we talked about that, we'll go through each individual process of the pen making. I'll go over and we'll get started. Next step, and which is really probably the main first step, is going to be setting up our blank. Now what we have here is, this is going to be our starting pen blank. This is a piece of Bacote wood. It's a native or exotic hardwood from Mexico, Central and South America. And this is the blank that we'll be using. So the first thing we'll do is set this blank up. And again, this blank is 3/4 of an inch square by about 5.5 inches long. That's your standard starting pen blank. You're going to have your insert, brass insert. And the way we're going to do this first off is line it up with the top of this blank. Scribe a mark. Give yourself about 1/8 of an inch. Drop down. Scribe a second mark. And then this bottom excess you can toss away. And that'll give us our 2 pieces for our pen blank. Now, one thing that I like to do is scribe a mark this way. So making a plus. And what that's going to do is allow you, when you put this blank and all onto your lathe and you start turning, you're going to have a continuous grain pattern throughout your pen. As you can see, this blank here is what I'm talking about. You can see how it went straight through, and the pen will be the full pattern all the way through. So that's really it for marking out your blank. Next thing you want to do is cut your blank. You can do this either on a bandsaw, a hand saw, a table saw, if you have a sled, because it is a very small piece. But cut this end off, that's your scrap. Split your blanks in half, and then once that's complete, that blank is done, and now you have essentially this. Next step after that, you're going to want to center it up or find center. Now, one way that I recommend is just take a straight edge. And this is the way I do it. There's a lot of centering tools out there to find center. I'll just line it up with the 2 corners here and here. Scribe a line, same corner, corner, scribe a line. And where that line crosses, that's your center, or at least pretty close to it. Take a good center punch, line it up right with the center, and pop a small divot in each end, and that'll help line up your drill bit, which will be our next step. At this point, we'll take a 7mm drill bit. You can either go in your drill press in a Jacobs truck on your lathe, or if you're really good and get hand coordination, just in a standard hand drill. But you're going to drill a 7mm hole as close to center of this blank as possible. Once that's done, then you're going to need to insert or put your inserts in. These inserts are brass, very smooth brass, so highly recommend some lower grit sandpaper. Give it a good scuffing up all the way around. And then a good CA or super glue just to insert it in. So basically glue it up, slide it into your blank, let it set for a while. It is super glue, so it'll set up fairly quickly. If you're a little impatient or you want a little extra holding power, a good little active super glue, CA glue activator, squirt it on each end. It'll work just fine. That'll get your blank. Now, once you gave it a little bit of time to set up, then the next step you're going to want to do is trim it. In this case, you have your reamer, pin bushing reamer. I've got it chucked up in just a hand drill. It doesn't really matter here. But you have two parts here on the reamer. You have the end part, the end of this reamer, and that's going to essentially trim the inside of this insert so that it doesn't hangs up. You got any burrs, takes out the burrs. And it's also going to flatten out the end of your work surface here. I don't know if you can kind of see that, a little hard to see, but it's a very dense wood. That gives you a flatter surface to work off of. So it'll lock in place just like so. But that is really it for getting your blank set up. Once you have these set up, we'll put them in we'll get this cleared up, get the lathe set up and squared away, put these in the lathe and get ready to start turning. Hope you guys are enjoying. If you do like this content, please feel free to like and subscribe, and always leave a comment. And thank you for enjoying, thank you. We've got our blanks made up with our inserts put in. Now we'll go ahead and get them set up here on the lathe and get ready to start turning. So one thing that I like to do is take my blanks and I'll round off. I'll take it over to my sander and I'll kind of round over all the sharper edges here on the ends. And this just makes it easier for turning, especially with the smaller turning tools that I have. It's a convenience thing for me. You can get by with just leaving the sharp edges if you've got larger tools, but for me, just a little something that I like to do. So the way we're going to set this up is, we first got our one bushing we're going to slide it on. Slide our first blank in place. Our second bushing. Then our next blank, making sure to keep this line, just like I mentioned before where I made this line. It's lined up. In bushing. And then we have our knob here, basically this, get it down and nice and tight so it doesn't these don't spin too much. So, but you want to like totally over tighten it, and then bring your tailstock in, line it up with your center, and then you can just kind of give it a little bit of a cinch down, not too much, but you want to make sure that these blanks stay pretty tight against each other. And again, that they're lined up. And that's really it. I'll give it one little quick to make sure my tool rest is set up so that they don't impact the tool rest. And I want this so that my tool is just barely riding that, basically my side lip edge of that tool rest. And that's really it. We've got it turned down on the lathe here from what we originally had. Remember, we started at 3/4 of an inch blanks all the way across. And this is a slimline pen, so it's going to be a very thin blank of material here, as you can see on this pre-made pen that this pen that I've already made. So you're going to have a very thin amount of material. It should line up almost, at least with the ends, with your bushing sizes all the way across. And this will accommodate for your end caps and for your nose piece. And there's a small little ring that goes right in the middle, and that'll all fit perfectly to keep it lined up all the way across. So one of the things that you want to keep in mind here is a very thin material, so you want to use something really good. In my case, I'm going to be using this thick CA glue or super glue, and that'll hold everything together. One of the first things I want to do is I'll start with a light sanding with, this is 220 grit sandpaper, and I'll just run this by hand with it running at a low speed on the lathe, and that's just to take off any high spots and kind of give it a good evenness, anything that may have been missed with the chisel. Once everything feels nice, that where it should be, turn it off, give it a good back and forth with the grain sanding, and that'll take out hopefully any kind of swirl marks. And then we're going to come in, and I have some different grits here of these sanding pads. And the first grit we're going to start with is 1500 grit, same thing, light speed. And we'll give it just a light sanding. Turn it off, hand sand it, then move up to our next grit, which is 1500. $2,400. And finally, we'll go up to 3,200. And that is very smooth right now as it is. But we want to make sure that it's good and hardened up. It's got a good protective coating on it. So now what we'll do is we'll just take our piece of paper towel here, just kind of fold it up a little bit, fold it over. And as our lathe is turning to pretty much the slowest speed that it can turn at here, we'll go through and just add a few drops down the line, like so, and then just kind of just lightly coat over it and keep spinning it back and forth here. We'll get a little bit of time to basically set here, and then we'll add another coat shortly. Give it some time for that glue to set up, and we'll add a couple of layers to it. I usually add like about 3 layers over. Then we'll let it set it for a little bit. See? We don't want to rush it. You don't want to really do anything with it right now. Let it give it some time to set. Also, a good thing to keep in mind right now, as I can tell, normally when I'm doing this, I have the door open or some kind of ventilation. Good idea to have some ventilation. There is the CA glue, as it heats up, it does put off some fumes that are probably not the best for you, but just keep that in mind also. We'll just let it spin here. And that's really it. That's about the extent of our finishing process. And that looks pretty good. So we'll let it set here a little bit. We'll hit it with a little spritz of accelerant. And then just take a paper towel again, and this will be more or less just for a polish on it. Perfect. And then that's really it. We can now we can just loosen everything up here. Now, because you did super glue it, it is going to be, these may have a little bit of time popping off, but just pop them loose. You can see there's a little bit of buildup of glue. Go. Got a little bit of extra pop to it, but that's really it. That's your casing. That's essentially what your pin will be. So we'll go through the assembly process here in a minute and show you how the pin is essentially put together. Let's get everything kind of cleaned up. We'll get everything cleaned off the table here. Get this whole area cleaned up before we get this. Okay, now that we got the table cleared off here, I went ahead and got everything kind of moved the camera in closer. You can kind of see exactly what we're working with here. And these are our various components since they are fairly small. You have your two, basically your wooden pieces here. These are your inserts with your tubes. You can see they're very thin brass in there. You have an end cap and your pocket clip. You have a small barrel ring as an accent, your twist mechanism, your actual writing pin insert cartridge, and your nose cap. First thing we'll assemble will be the tail. So one thing I like to do here is just take just a very small dab of CA glue. And I'll put there. Place the cap, and then we'll give it a little bit of a press, just kind of push it in place, and then set it off to the side. And that's now that the end cap is assembled. The next thing we're going to want to do is take our twist or our front mechanism here, nose cap, excuse me, and again, same thing. We'll take a little bit of CA glue, just kind of squirt in there just a little bit. Press our nose cap on, and then press it in place. Perfect. Nose cap installed. We'll set it off to the side. Now this is the critical part. So the twist mechanism, in order to make this pin work as advertised, the brass part will slide inside like so. So one thing we'll do is we'll set our vise up here a little bit different. So we got some room. And we're going to want to press it in just barely. Clear the brass. Take our actual cartridge. I'm going to screw it in and then I'm going to turn it. Okay, pin doesn't come out. I need to go farther. Don't get in a hurry with this spot because this is honestly probably the most critical part ever. Again, a little bit of a snug. Try it again. Not quite. Not quite where I want it. It says go to the second line. I like to just try to slowly do this. Try it again. Still not quite where I want it. Probably one more final push. That looks pretty good. So we'll clean off the tip here. Some gunk build up on it. And then this insert will slip right over. And then our end cap right over that. And that's it. That's our pin. A little notepad here. Give it a little bit. We got something on this cap. There we go. Perfect. And there she is. Still got a little trash or something on there. I'm not sure what that is, but it'll clean up after riding a little bit. But that's our pin insert or slimline pin. So we'll get this cleaned up. That's it. And then you can just continue to batch multiples of these out as you go along. Well, that's it. We've made a pin. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the demonstration here. And please look forward to more videos. Next time we'll be making bottle stoppers. It'll be my first time making one, so we'll kind of learn as we go. And if you guys enjoy this type of content, please feel free to like and subscribe. And as always, leave comments. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.